To make your Swiss roll, it's really important that you have everything prepared and in the right place before you start. Unlike other cakes, there is no fat in this, but also the main raising agent in this is the air that you whisk into it. So if you don't have everything in the right place to start with, you are not going to be able to keep all that air in your mixture. So the first thing you need to do is to grease your Swiss roll tin. So I've greased this with butter. You can't really do it with oil because we want the paper to stick. So then put your paper into the tin and push it down so that it sticks to the butter. And then if you need to, cut diagonally into the corners so that the corners, instead of being all scrunched up and going to cook in your cake in that way, are nice and flat. And that just helps to give you a more even cake when it comes out of the oven. So the first thing you need to do, grease your cake tin and put it to one side. If you're using greaseproof paper, I would grease the greaseproof paper. I'm using baking parchment and I know it will not stick to that. My flour, 75 grams of flour, I am sieving that onto a plate and I'm keeping hold of the sieve. So keep your sieve on the plate. And then the last ingredients for the cake, I have 75 grams of caster sugar in my bowl and I'm going to add 3 eggs. I'm using 75 grams and a 3-egg mixture because of the size of my Swiss roll tin. I haven't got a 2-egg Swiss roll tin at home, so I need to use 3 eggs. So it's only your eggs and caster sugar which go into your bowl, flour on the plate, tin ready to go, and then you're going to need to use an electric mixer. You can do this by hand, but it will take a very long time if you do. So, just to make it easier and quicker, use an electric mixer. And you need to whisk these eggs and sugar together until they hold what's called a trail. So, start whisking, whisk slowly until you've got the eggs and sugar starting to mix, and then turn it up high as it will go, and you need to use some patience here. So I've only just started whisking this. I expect to be whisking this for 5 to 10 minutes, and by the time I'm done I would expect my mixture to be somewhere up here. This is nowhere near holding a trail and nowhere near light and fluffy enough, so be patient, keep whisking and check with your member of staff that you have actually whisked this enough to move on to the next step. Now this mixture is nearly done, but I just want to show you. If I pick that up and let it trail back over the top, it disappears back into the mixture very quickly. Don't be tempted to stop now because this is not quite ready. You've got to keep whisking a bit longer. Okay, so I've whisked this for a bit longer. And now if I pick the beaters up and allow that mixture to fall back on the top of the bowl, you can hopefully see that it's still there. And you should be able to see that while you slowly count to 3. So 1, 2, 3. And the first bit of mixture that fell off my beaters is still visible. So I know that that is ready. And now you need to work quickly because we've whisked a lovely lot of air into that, and all the time we are standing around doing nothing, that air is going. So you sieve your flour back over the top. Don't dump it on the top, sieve it over the top. If you just dump it on the top, you can see already the weight of the flour is causing my egg and sugar to dip in the middle, and you slowly fold this in. So turn the spoon over. Please remember to cut down the middle of your bowl. Don't just turn around the outside. If you do that without moving your bowl, what happens is you have a big lump of flour in the middle that is not mixed into anything. And you stop stirring and mixing this as soon as you cannot see any more flour in it. So it's still really light and moussey, but there is no flour left in this that I can see that hasn't been mixed in. So there's no couple of extra stirs for good luck. We just need to get this into the cake tin. So tip your mixture into there and then try tipping it into the corners of your cake tin if you can. Right, you can see it's quite a thin mixture when it's all over this cake tin, so we need to try and spread it evenly, and it's better if you can tip your mixture into the corners rather than spreading it, because if you tip it, we are not knocking out any flour. And I'm just going to take a bit of that off the spoon to put into that corner so that I have this all over the corners of my tin, and then I'm just going to drop it once to try and keep it flat, and that is going into the oven. Now, while that's in the oven, you've got 6 to 8 minutes to clear up your worktop. You're not going to need your mixer again, so you can put that to one side, but you are going to need a clean, dry worktop. Before you put your mixer away, when you've unplugged it, you need to have a dry dishcloth that you have wrung out and just wipe over the outside of your mixture, getting any cake off it, and then get hold of the lead in the dishcloth and wrap the lead around your mixer so that we know there's no mixture on the lead either. To be ready for when the Swiss roll comes out of the oven, you need to put a second piece of greaseproof paper on your worktop, or a second piece of baking parchment, and sprinkle a little bit of sugar over the top. You are going to turn your Swiss roll onto this paper and use this to help you roll up. So just sprinkle a little bit of sugar over the paper to help make sure that it doesn't stick, and put a couple of spoonfuls of jam into a bowl. And because you've got to roll your Swiss roll while it's hot, if you wait until it's cold it will crack. We want the jam to be nice and soft and spreadable, and if you just stir your jam up, it makes it much easier to spread over your hot Swiss roll. So I've got a spoon for my jam. I've got that. The only other thing I'm going to need is a knife, and I've just now got to wait for my Swiss roll to cook. When your Swiss roll is done, it should be nice and golden brown, should have pulled the paper slightly in from the edges. So this has pulled the paper in from that edge, it's no longer against the edge of the tin. And if you touch it very gently on the top, it should spring back. Remember, this is a very soft cake because it has no fat in it. As soon as it comes out of the oven, you need to tip it upside down onto your greaseproof paper, and you need to work quickly so that this cake does not cool down, because once it's cool you will not be able to roll it. So loosen all the edges around the greaseproof paper first, or the baking parchment. Do all the edges first, and then very carefully peel the paper off. If your paper does not peel off and your cake feels a bit sticky, then unfortunately it was not quite cooked. So peel carefully all the paper. Here we go. A little bit comes off, that doesn't matter. There we go. Right, paper out of the way. You can see that this is hot. With your sharp knife, very carefully take about 1/2 centimetre off the edges, all 4 edges of your cake. Don't take too much or you're just going to be left with almost no cake. But the edges of your cake are just that little bit crispier. And again, that will cause your Swiss roll to crack. So take off all 4 edges, and as you can see, I've taken off a tiny little bit, not even 1/2 centimetre. Decide which way you're going to roll this. I'm going to roll mine this way. So I am marking the Swiss roll, right, marking the Swiss roll about 1 centimetre from the edge. So I've just marked it. I haven't cut it through. And now what I need to do is very quickly spread my jam on this. If this were a chocolate Swiss roll, or if you were going to put jam and cream in it, you would need to roll it up first, because if you try and put jam and cream in this while it's still hot, obviously the cream is going to melt, and that is not going to be very good, because this has got to be warm while we're rolling. So a thin layer of jam all over your Swiss roll, not quite to that edge because I don't want it to come out that end. There we go. And then you can start to roll. So to roll your Swiss roll, pick the paper up or pick your Swiss roll up, and where you marked it along there, just press against that to make sure that you have a start for the middle of your Swiss roll. And it's a two-handed job, so you need to keep hold of this paper and make sure that you are rolling the Swiss roll up. You can see as you roll it, the jam squashes out, so pull your paper up with your hands as you go so that the Swiss roll is rolled in the paper. Don't take it out of the paper. What you need to do is just wrap the paper underneath and back round your Swiss roll and give it a chance to cool. And if you can see in the end where the join is, try and put the join to the side, and you leave that like that for a few minutes to cool, and these odd bits of cake that you've got, you can just eat those. When your Swiss roll is cool, you can carefully unwrap it and put it onto a plate. And if you've done it correctly, hopefully you will see that it's actually rolled, rolled at either end. So we don't want it to be folded, we want it to be rolled at either end, and when you slice it, we should get a roll that goes all the way through. So we should end up with a Swiss roll that actually has a nice roll all the way through the middle.